I've been on a search for the perfect palette pretty much ever since I started painting. And I know some of you are too. A lot of you ask me what palette I use, so I hope this video helps you to find your perfect palette. This was the first one I started with, and it met my needs, and it's easy to travel with. It's small, but it has small storage areas, so they tend to leak into each other. But worse than that is that there's paint stored on both sides, so if you want to put it away when the paint's wet, it's going to run all over the place. So this is what I'm recommending for beginners now. The thing that I like about this palette is it opens up with an extra mixing area. It doesn't have paint stored on both sides, and the wells are deep enough to put a decent amount of paint without it just running into each other. And this is still the palette that I use when I'm traveling. I take this and paper with me wherever I go. This is actually a Becky Gromlich Teacher's Choice palette. It's what I recommend for beginners and students, including the colors. And you can get it through Spokane Art Supply, and there'll be a link in the comments. After a while, I wanted a bigger palette with a bigger mixing area. We made a permanent place for me to paint in our home. And so I bought this Blick palette. Now this has taken me through many years of painting, and it's old and breaking in some places, but it's fairly sturdy. It has quite a bit of area for paint, but it had this problem of paint just running. I don't know if it's not quite level, and so I put this in here, which is really ugly, but it's caulking, and I didn't know it would stain. I thought it'd be this nice white line, you know, but anyway, it did get kind of ugly, but it worked really well, and it's not a bad palette, and it's fairly inexpensive. It's not super sturdy. I have used it for years and years and years though, and it still works. The next palette I discovered a friend using. It has extra mixing trays so that you can keep your colors for one painting and then do another color. These wells hold a whole tube of paint, which I absolutely love that. It makes it so easy to use. This one is probably what a whole tube looks like. I've hardly used that at all since I filled it. And so there's still a little bit of room for putting your water on there to loosen up your paint. This one, it doesn't have the problem with paint running all over. The cons are that it stains, which many of them do, most of the plastic ones do, but also that it's quite expensive, and the shipping, especially to another country, can be a lot. And actually that's the biggest con, is the cost. It also comes with a square paint storage area that you can squeeze out all of your paints. I don't have that to show you because I don't use it. I tend to just use these colors. I do have a link for all of these palettes except for this one. This is the only one I don't have a link for, but I'll give you the name of it and you can maybe look it up. This one is quite sturdy. I decided after a student told me that she couldn't afford this premium palette that I was going to look into some other palettes to benefit my students. And this is the one that I came up with that I really like. It's called the Robert E. Wood palette. I'm pretty sure that all of these would hold a whole tube of paint, which for me is really important. It already has a dividing line, which I think is great. It has a very large mixing area, and it has these wells for if you're painting wet on wet and you want some bigger amounts of paint mixed. The cons is that it's quite flimsy. It's maybe the most flimsy of all of these that I've shown you. If I was starting over and looking again, this is what I would get though. If you like this video, please go ahead and leave me a comment or subscribe or like or share. And also, if you would like to support my channel, there's an opportunity to buy me a cup of coffee. The link to that is listed in the comments below. It would be most appreciated. And then there's the Tom Jones watercolor palette. Now this palette is the palette of all palettes as far as sturdiness goes. It's packaged very nicely. And it's protected very nicely in the packaging. This palette is the sturdiest of all the palettes. I mean, this is the sturdy palette. I can't imagine anything happening to it. It also has big wells, which probably would hold a whole tube, but I'm not quite positive. And it has a very large mixing area, which is great. And the lid forms another very large mixing area, which is also great. The cons to this are that it's not too badly priced, but it's big. It's quite a bit bigger than my big ones, which are quite big, as you can see. And so it goes out an inch further this way and 2 inches further this way. And depending on your painting area, that just might be too big. And for me, it makes my water kind of far away. I put my water up at the top. And the other con for me is that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 mixing wells, but these are really huge, so I don't know if you'd even use them, which means it has 15 mixing wells. I really like having, I think it's 20 that I use regularly that I like to have on my palette, and so I'd have to figure out what to leave out if I got this palette. So I couldn't see in the picture when I ordered it that there was not another row back here of these, and so I am not going to keep this one. I'm returning it, but I do think that it's a great palette, and if sturdy is important to you, then it would be a great palette for you. I'd love to hear about what kind of watercolor palette you use. What brand is it? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? If you could just leave me a note in the comments below, I'll read every one. So my conclusion for myself is that the one I'm using right now is the best so far. This one I don't have a link for, but it is called the Premium Palette, and you can find their website and you can order it. And I really do love it, and I plan to keep using it. But I might use this one at some point too. I haven't quite decided yet. I'd really like to be using something in my videos that people can actually buy. And this one is kind of out of touch for a lot of people, out of reach for a lot of people. Either because they live out of the country and it's expensive to ship, or just because it's too expensive to start with. But for those of you that can afford it, it is a great palette. So my recommendation is between these three, with this being if you have room in your painting area for something large. It's very sturdy, it's a great palette. And this, if you need something and can't afford a premium palette, then this would be great too. The link for all of these palettes is in the description, and you can look them up and decide for yourself which one suits your needs the best.